elementary teacher struggling to manage your classroom expectations, then this video is for you. Today, I want to talk about the 3 C's of classroom management and how we can use them to guide all of your classroom management needs.
Welcome to the Ignite Your Teaching video podcast, where we help elementary teachers to make good teaching easy again. I'm your host, Patty Firth, mom of 3, wife, and experienced classroom teacher who has made it my mission to help other teachers establish efficient routines, find effective solutions, and deliver engaging lessons over at madlylearning.com. So are you ready to ignite your teaching?
First part about managing a classroom, the first C is going to be connection. Now, when we're talking about a connection, we're really just talking about building relationships. We want to, and I'm sure we've heard it all before, we want to build relationships with our students so that we can generate the know, the like, and the trust factor. We want students to know us, we want them to like us, and we want them to respect us, and we want them to trust us as the teacher. Now, we do that by getting to know our students, getting to know what makes them tick, how they learn, getting them to understand what makes them laugh, what they do outside of school. And it may mean spending 5 minutes at nutrition break or at recess, sort of just asking them questions like, who's your favorite team? I noticed you liked hockey. What do you like about video games? Having conversations as a group that's just a casual conversation, but getting to know what makes them tick, understanding what they like, what they don't like, and how you can get to know them. It also isn't a one-way street, though. It also means that they get to know you. Now, this is a delicate dance because we don't want our students to know everything about us, because we do want to maintain some professional boundaries here, or we want to just simply maintain professional boundaries, but we also want them to get to know us as the teacher. What do we like? What are some of the things that we're good at? What are we going to struggle with? In my own classroom, my students know I love coffee, but they also know that I'm going to forget where I put my coffee cup. So it's like, oh, there's Mrs. Firth again, forgetting that she left her coffee on my desk. And it's an ongoing running joke. They know I have 3 kids. They know I love colored paper and colored pens and colored paper and pretty things, but they also know I hate loose paper. So getting them to know kind of your quirks and what makes you tick and why you are running your classroom the way you're running your classroom. So when you make such a big deal about the fact that there's loose paper in their desk, they know why. They know it's because it drives you a little bonkers and crazy, and they can joke around with you and they can get to know you, but it's that building of a relationship. They need to know who you are as a teacher. They need to like you, not all of the times, but they need to get to know you and generally have positive feelings towards you, because they'll work harder when they do, and they need to trust you. They're not going to like you all of the time because you're going to have to do things that they don't like give them tests and things like that. That underlining feeling of they need to know you like them, and you need to know that they like you. Generally speaking, you have a positive relationship with your students. That is going to help, and it builds the foundation in which you build your classroom management and your positive learning environment. It is all based and contingent on that piece. If they feel like you don't like them, they're going to not work as hard. If you feel like you don't care, that's the feeling they get, that you don't care, they're not going to work hard. If you get disappointed, they don't care if you're disappointed if they don't have that level of respect and relationship built with you. You work harder for people that you feel are worthy of you working hard for. So it's really important that we do that in our classroom, because it is the foundation in which we build everything else around it. It's hard to learn from people you don't like. So it's really important that is, especially at the beginning of the year, that is the foundation. So as you're thinking about what goes into your classroom in September, and I think this is a really good time to plan out what that is going to look like. It's really important that we think, when we're building out how we're going to do things differently for classroom management or who the kids are going to be, spend some time now getting to know your future kids. Seek them out. If you know who's going to be in your class next year, seek them out on the playground. Find and build relationships, especially with those hard to love kids. Find opportunities to build relationships with them now before the end of the year, so they know who you are, so they're excited about coming into your classroom in September. It's never too late to start building those relationships with your future students not just with your current students. So give that a try at this point, because it will help you to build that foundation of classroom management in the fall. Now, the next C for building classroom management is going to be consistency. Now, we have the relationships, but we also need to be highly predictable for our students. They like parameters and structure and routine in our classroom. They want to know that we are in charge. When they don't feel like the adult is in charge, you often be in charge, and it has to be you. Now, that doesn't mean that we lead by a, aggressive or authoritative style where we have to be the ones in charge and control of all of things, but we need to be a leader. We don't need to be the dictator, but we do need to be the leader of the environment, the leader of the learning, and we need to do this consistently. So they need to know, number one, that we are capable and confident leaders that they are willing to follow. Because remember, we're outnumbered here in our classroom. So when we build up that sense of we are confident leaders in our classroom that they can feel comfortable in following, because we have consistency, we have rules, we have routines, we consistently follow the rules, we consistently apply those routines to our classroom. They know what to expect. They know that if they're like, this is hard, they know how you're going to respond. They know what to expect when they walk in the door every morning. They know what you're going to say. They could literally be you if you ask them to. That's always a cool thing when you're playing drama and you're like, okay, who wants to pretend to be me? And they go up and they nail you right away. If they know what you sound like, if they know what you do, if they know how you approach things, if they know what drives you crazy, they know that you're going to be on them for not putting loose papers in their duotangs. Have you gotten the idea that that's a crazy part of, like, I'm really much on that? They know that about you, and you're consistent with that. They know what to expect. And then because it's predictable and it becomes a routine for them, it's easier for them to be, it doesn't make them feel like they're in chaos every day. That's why we have agendas on the board so students know what to expect in a day. It's why we follow the same routine and structure, say for literacy. So in my literacy lessons, I follow the same routine and structure every week, every day. We do centers. They know what that looks like. I have guided groups. They know what that looks like. They know what a read aloud looks like. There's routines and expectations around all of those things that I do in a day. So they know how to behave. They know what my expectations are because I'm consistent. Now I do this, I do all of this before September even starts. I plan out all of my routines and my rules that I want to be consistent about. I walk through them in my mind. How are we going to travel from one point to the other? How will I reinforce that routine? How do we change if we have a broken pencil? What do we do? Where do I put my stuff? What notebooks? Where do the notebooks go? How do I get from my desk to the notebook bucket if I don't have them stored inside their desks and I want them in a bucket? What does that look like? And I walk through the day and I look at all of the routines that I may need to have in place, and I strategically plan those out in my mind and on paper so that I know what they are, because it's easier for me to be consistent if I'm not making it up as I go along. If I have some ideas of this is what works for me and I know what's going to work for me. Now, if you're new to teaching and you don't have that, it's a great opportunity to grab my rules and responsibilities checklist. We will help you plan out all of those rules and responsibilities because we've gone through and added all of the things that you may need routines about throughout your day and how you plan those out, which is really handy and helpful to give you an idea of what do you need to think about prior to school even starting to set up that consistency in your classroom. What's important to you? What's not important to you? What do you want to do? What do you not want to do? It's not just going to work. I know that a lot of us will look at some really great teachers in our school and be like, I don't know how they do that. It looks like they're doing nothing. It looks like they're just sort of existing and things just work. And I know I've had people go like, how do you get them to do that? They'll walk into my classes quietly working on their writing and people are like, and I'm sitting there working with a student, or I'm, marking something and they're just working, and people are like, how do you get them to do that? It's because they know what to expect. We've trained it, we've rehearsed it, we've gone over it. They know what I want, how I'm going to apply it. They know what that means. And they have practiced it over and over again, and every day is exactly the same, so they know what to do. Doesn't mean it works out every single day. No. Some days you have a bad day, but when you have that consistency and you know exactly what to expect and you reinforce it every day, then it becomes a routine and your students can sort of fall into line without necessarily needing to have all of these outside classroom management expectations where you have to give them points. Now, sometimes points will help to establish those routines because they're external rewards, but eventually we need to stop relying on the points as being the only motivator to get our students to do the things we need to do. So we use those points in the beginning and then slowly wean our students off of that system, which is why I love using my Kudos Club, because it engages students initially as a group and it's not an individual reward. They're working together towards a group, so they have that group mindset of how we can accomplish goals as a group. And they earn points, and we slowly increase what we're working on, so that something we had to work on in September was not a goal that we're working on in August, or not a goal we're working on in May. It's going to look different. So you stop rewarding. You're not necessarily needing to reward the same things over and over again. It is transitional and grows with your students as your students show more and more skills inside your classroom. Third C of classroom management is compassion. Now, this might feel like connection, but it's not. So yes, we need to have a connection with our students because that's an important building those relationships, but we also need to have compassion. We have rules, but sometimes sometimes rules are not evenly applied exactly the same way to every student. We need to have compassion and empathy so that we understand that not every student gets the same thing, but every student gets what they need. So that might mean that sometimes you have students who do not come to you every week with guided reading, or with your small group reading centers, whatever we're calling them. With your small group reading instruction, you may not need to see some students every week. You may only need to see them once a month, once every month and a half, versus you have other students that you need to see almost every day. And that's totally okay. Your compassion is saying that you are going to give students what they need. You are flexible within, you have rules and consistency, but within that rule, there's some gray area that you can play. Some kids will need to listen to music, other kids won't. Some kids will need to write while they're standing, other kids won't. Some kids can work in the hallway, other kids can't, because it's not what is good for their learning needs. So being empathetic and also listening to what they're dealing with, understanding where they're coming from. And we want to be consistent. We want to build those relationships, but we also need to be compassionate that we are dealing with human beings here. We are dealing with people that have needs outside of what is standard, and we need to allow those opportunities to sort of say, okay, you have a deadline. Everyone has a deadline, but within that deadline, I'm willing to let you negotiate whether or not it needs to be before or after that, but that's on the onus is on you, that you have some wiggle room, but they understand that they have rules and then they have negotiable wiggle room on it. And that is consistently applied, but we're giving students that compassion. It also means that we need to show our understanding and appreciation of our students. They need to know when they did a good job. We need to give them that positive feedback. We need to tell them the days that we're really proud of them. We need to show them we like them. We need to have a little bit of fun, and we need to be able to not be so serious all the time and understand that you can joke around and they can have some fun with you, and you can, go and play a competitive game of dodgeball where it's, student versus teacher and whatever it needs to be, but you can have that time where you just treat each other as human beings. And it's not always about the marks, and it's not always about the learning. And sometimes you just do things because it's fun, because you want to. And other times you just realize that something is happening in a day and you have to scrap your lesson plan because it's just not working, because maybe something happened outside at recess and you need to deal with that, because it is more important that you deal with that thing than you move on and teach that math lesson. And understanding and having compassion for where your students are and the ability to listen to what they need and respond compassionately to them as a human, from one human to another, is also another really important part of being able to manage your classroom. Now, I know that we're not necessarily talking about structures or systems that are going to be in place, but I will guarantee you that those are on the surface. Those issues are sort of the iceberg. That's the part of the iceberg you see, but that won't work without the other pieces. So, classroom management, if we go deep into the underneath part of the iceberg, comes down to those 3 C's of the connection and relationships you build with your students, the consistency in which you apply rules and routines in your classroom, and the compassion in which you show your students. That is the foundation and the underlying root of whether or not your classroom management is going to be successful. Now, you may have students in your room that are dealing with other issues that it doesn't matter what you do, those are going to be difficult for that student. And that is a completely separate issue that we need to address with special education and child and youth workers and really get that student support and where the compassion comes in. But it still means that we need to deal with students in a assertive way. We need to deal with students with an authoritative, that we need to deal with students in a way that allows them to know that there is consistency and compassion. And even dealing with children that have huge behavioral mental health issues that are getting in their way of their success at school, it is a lot easier to work with them when you focus on these 3 C's of connection, consistency, and compassion, because it makes it a lot easier to work with them long term. It's not going to be perfect and you're not going to win every single time, but it certainly helps to build that foundation in which that trusting relationship can work for that student and help to ease some of the difficulties that they may be presenting in your classroom.